The art of being heard. Communication skills that transform careers and businesses. Dedication. For every person who has ever felt invisible in a room full of people who had something important to say but couldn't find the words, who stood at the edge of opportunity and stepped back in silence. This book is for you. Your voice matters. It is time the world heard it. Forward. Every great movement in human history began with a conversation. A leader who found the courage to speak. A visionary who translated an idea into words. A quiet individual who finally said enough and changed the world. Communication is not merely a professional skill. It is the foundation of human civilization. It is how love is declared, peace is brokered, companies are built, and legacies are formed. And yet, it remains the single most underdeveloped skill in most people's lives. This book does not promise overnight transformation. What it promises is a journey, honest, practical, and deeply human. From the earliest steps of finding your voice to the advanced mastery of moving audiences, closing deals, and inspiring generations. Whether you are standing at the beginning of your career, looking to break through a ceiling, or leading an organization through uncertainty, this book was written for you. The art of being heard starts with one simple act of courage: opening your mouth and beginning. Introduction. The silence that cost me everything. Imagine sitting in a boardroom. The discussion is spirited, ideas are flying around the table, and you have the single most important insight of the entire meeting sitting right there in your mind. You can feel it. You know it is right. And you say nothing. The meeting ends. Someone else raises a similar point in the corridor afterwards. They get the credit. They get the promotion. You go back to your desk and wonder, again, why you can never seem to get heard. This is not a story about talent. It is not a story about intelligence or work ethic. It is a story about communication and the invisible gap between what we think and what we say. That gap costs people careers. It costs businesses millions. It costs relationships, opportunities, and years of potential that are simply never realized. But here is the truth that this entire book is built upon. Communication is not a gift, it is a skill, and every skill can be learned. The greatest communicators in history, the ones whose words moved mountains, were not born that way. Winston Churchill, one of the most celebrated orators of the 20th century, had a pronounced stutter and a lisp as a child. Mahatma Gandhi, who mobilized hundreds of millions with his words, was once so crippled by shyness that he fled a courtroom mid-case. Oprah Winfrey, now synonymous with the power of conversation, grew up in poverty with no platform and no model for what great communication looked like. Warren Buffett, the Oracle of Omaha, was so terrified of public speaking as a young man that he would physically avoid any class that required him to present. Each of them started where you may be starting now, and each of them made a decision to grow. This book is organized in 4 parts. Part 1 meets you exactly where you are. As a beginner, perhaps nervous, perhaps unsure. Part 2 builds the essential skills of clarity, emotional intelligence, and storytelling. Part 3 takes you into advanced territory, persuasion, public speaking, and leadership. Part 4 applies everything to your business and career. By the end, you will not just understand communication, you will be transformed by it. Let us begin. Part 1. The beginner. Finding your voice. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Zig Ziglar. Chapter 1. Why communication is the most valuable skill you will ever learn. In the modern world, skills are currency. We invest years learning technical competencies, coding, finance, medicine, law. We earn degrees and certifications. We perfect our craft. And yet, study after study confirms the same astonishing truth. The single greatest predictor of professional success is not technical skill. It is the ability to communicate. A Harvard Business School study found that communication skills were the #1 quality employers sought, above technical knowledge, above academic performance, above experience. LinkedIn's Global Talent Trends report consistently lists communication as the most in-demand soft skill across every industry worldwide. But this is not just about careers. Consider your personal life. Every relationship you have, with your partner, your children, your friends, your parents, is shaped entirely by how you communicate. Every misunderstanding, every conflict, every moment of deep connection, all of it traces back to communication. Communication as a career accelerant. Think about the people in your organization who seem to rise effortlessly. Are they always the most technically brilliant? Often not. They are, almost without exception, the ones who can articulate ideas clearly, inspire confidence, navigate conflict gracefully, and make people feel understood. Communication does not just help you do your job better, it changes how other people perceive your capability. It shapes your personal brand. It determines whether your ideas are heard, your contributions are recognized, and your potential is understood by those who hold the doors of opportunity. The business case organizations lose an estimated $1.2 trillion annually due to poor communication, according to research by Holmes Report. Projects fail, teams fracture, customers leave, talent walks out the door. In contrast, companies whose leaders communicate with clarity, empathy, and vision consistently outperform their competitors. Communication is not a soft skill. It is the hardest skill and the one most worth mastering. Chapter exercise. Write down 3 recent moments when better communication could have changed an outcome. At work, at home, or in a social setting. What would you have said differently? This is the beginning of your communication self-awareness. Chapter 2. Where most people start, and why that is perfectly fine. Let us be honest about where most people begin their communication journey. Anxious, uncertain, and convinced that everyone else in the room is more confident, more articulate, and more capable than they are. This feeling has a name. Psychologists call it the spotlight effect, the cognitive bias that makes us believe others are watching and judging us far more than they actually are. The reality is that most people in any given room are too busy managing their own anxiety to notice yours. Real story. James Earl Jones, the boy who could not speak. James Earl Jones, whose voice has become one of the most recognized and celebrated in the world, the voice of Darth Vader and Mufasa, had a severe stutter as a child. After a traumatic family separation at age 5, he became virtually mute for 8 years. He communicated only in writing and refused to speak aloud in class. It was a high school English teacher who discovered his talent for poetry and challenged him to read his own work aloud. That single act of gentle encouragement began a journey that led to a Tony Award, 2 Emmy Awards, a Grammy, and an honorary Academy Award. His voice has moved billions of people. It nearly never existed. Jones's story is not unique. It is, in fact, the beginning of almost every great communicator's journey. A period of silence, struggle, or self-doubt, followed by a turning point, and then growth. The 4 stages of communication. Competence. Psychologists describe skill development through 4 stages, and communication is no exception. 1. Unconscious incompetence. You don't know what you don't know. Communication feels natural, but you are making significant errors you cannot yet see. 2. Conscious incompetence. You become aware of your gaps. This is uncomfortable but essential. It is where this book begins. 3. Conscious competence. You can communicate effectively, but it requires focus and deliberate effort. 4. Unconscious competence. Skilled communication becomes second nature. You do it automatically and elegantly. Most beginners are somewhere between stages 1 and 2. That is exactly where you should be. Awareness is the ignition switch. The beginner's most important asset. Curiosity expert. Communicators often develop habits, good and bad, that calcify over years. As a beginner, you have something they sometimes lose, genuine curiosity. You are asking real questions. You are paying attention in a fresh way. You are not yet burdened by the weight of your own reputation. Use this. Ask more questions than you answer. Observe more than you speak. Study the communicators around you with the intense curiosity of someone who knows they have everything to learn. Chapter Exercise. For one full day, focus entirely on listening. In every conversation, resist the urge to respond quickly. Instead, wait 3 seconds after the other person finishes before you reply. Notice what you hear in those 3 seconds that you normally miss. Chapter 3. The Inner Voice. Overcoming fear, self-doubt, and the inner critic. Before you can communicate powerfully with the world, you must first confront the voice inside your own head. For most people, that inner voice is not a cheerleader. It is a harsh, relentless critic. Before a presentation, it whispers, "You are going to forget what to say." Before a difficult conversation, it warns, "You are going to make things worse." Before networking, it insists, "Nobody wants to talk to you." This inner critic is the single greatest barrier to communication excellence, not lack of vocabulary, not insufficient practice, not absence of charisma. The battle is almost always internal before it is external. Real story. Mahatma Gandhi, the lawyer who fled the courtroom. Before Gandhi became the voice of Indian independence, before the speeches, the marches, and the negotiations that humbled an empire, he was a deeply shy, socially awkward young lawyer. His first case in a Bombay courtroom ended in humiliation. When he rose to cross-examine a witness, his mind went blank, his legs trembled, and he sat back down, unable to speak a word. He eventually fled Bombay for South Africa, partly to escape his reputation as a failed lawyer. It was there, forced by injustice into the role of advocate and organizer, that Gandhi discovered his voice. The man who once fled a courtroom in silence would go on to command the moral attention of the entire world. The science of communication anxiety. Communication anxiety, often called glossophobia in its public speaking form, is the most common social fear in the world. Studies suggest up to 77% of people experience significant anxiety about public speaking, and many more feel it in smaller social and professional settings. The physiological response is real. Elevated cortisol, increased heart rate, dry mouth, tunnel vision. Your brain interprets standing in front of others as a threat, an evolutionary holdover from an era when social rejection meant genuine danger. Understanding this is liberating. Your body is not betraying you. It is protecting you. The challenge is learning to reframe that protection as energy and to act in spite of the fear rather than waiting for the fear to disappear. It never fully disappears. The best communicators in the world still feel nervous. They have simply learned to use it. 3 techniques to silence the inner critic. Name it, don't claim it. When the inner critic speaks, give it a name. That's just my fear voice talking. Separating the voice from your identity reduces its power dramatically. Reframe the narrative. Replace "I am going to embarrass myself" with "I am going to share something valuable." The content of the inner monologue shapes your physical reality. Use preparation as armor. Most anxiety comes from uncertainty. The more prepared you are, the more the fear recedes. Preparation is not just technical rehearsal. It is the construction of confidence. Chapter exercise. Write a letter to your inner critic. Acknowledge its attempts to protect you, then firmly redirect it. Tell it what you intend to do anyway. This act of writing externalizes the fear and reduces its emotional charge. Chapter 4. The foundations. Listening, body language, and presence. Most people think communication begins when they open their mouth. In truth, the most important communication begins before a single word is spoken. The lost art of listening. We live in an age of broadcasting. Everyone has a platform, a feed, a channel. The premium has shifted dramatically from listening to speaking. And yet, the most universally admired communicators, the ones people describe as magnetic, engaging, and someone who really gets me, are almost all exceptional listeners. Research by the International Listening Association suggests that we listen at only 25% efficiency, meaning we miss 3/4 of what is said to us. We are mentally composing our response before the other person has finished speaking. We are distracted. We are projecting our own assumptions onto their words. True listening is an act of profound respect. It communicates to another person, "You matter enough for my full attention." In a world of constant distraction, this is extraordinarily rare and extraordinarily powerful. The Hare Framework for Active Listening. Halt. Stop what you are doing. Put away the phone. Close the laptop. Physically signal your full presence. Engage. Make appropriate eye contact. Nod. Lean slightly forward. Use your body to say, "I am with you." Anticipate. Expect that what this person is saying has value. Approach every conversation with genuine curiosity. Reflect. Before responding, briefly paraphrase what you heard. "What I'm hearing you say is..." This confirms understanding and makes the speaker feel genuinely heard. Body language. The silent communicator. Research by Dr. Albert Mehrabian, though often oversimplified, established a foundational truth. A significant portion of emotional communication is nonverbal. Your posture, gestures, facial expressions, and the use of physical space all communicate, sometimes more loudly than your words. For the beginning communicator, the most impactful changes are the simplest. Stand tall. Posture communicates confidence before you speak a word. Make eye contact, not the fixed, aggressive kind, the warm, engaged kind that says, "I see you." Slow down your movements. Nervous energy manifests as fidgeting and rushed gestures. Deliberate, calm movement signals control. Smile genuinely. The Duchenne smile, the one that reaches your eyes, is immediately distinguished from a performative one. It builds trust instantly. Presence, the X factor. You have met people who command a room simply by walking into it. They are not necessarily the loudest or the most conventionally attractive. They have something harder to define. Presence. Presence is the quality of being fully, completely here. Not distracted by what just happened or what might happen next. Not performing for the audience. Simply and powerfully occupying the moment. Presence is developed through mindfulness, preparation, and practice. It is the feeling you get when someone looks at you and you know without question that they are genuinely interested in you, not in how they appear to you. Chapter exercise. In your next 3 conversations, practice the HEAR framework. Afterward, journal what you noticed that you would normally have missed. Most people are stunned by how much richer their relationships feel after just 1 week of active listening. Part 2. The developing communicator, building confidence and clarity. The most important thing in communication is hearing what isn't said. Peter Drucker. Chapter 5. Clarity is kindness. How to say what you mean. Clarity is the single most underrated quality in communication. It is not the most glamorous skill. It doesn't generate the same admiration as eloquence or passion, but unclear communication causes more damage to careers, businesses, and relationships than almost any other failure. When we are unclear, we create confusion. Confusion creates conflict. Conflict creates cost. In time, trust, and money. In business, every misunderstood brief, every ambiguous email, every vague instruction cascades into hours of wasted effort and fractured team cohesion. Why we fail to be clear. We assume. We assume the other person knows what we mean, shares our context, and fills in the gaps the same way we would. They rarely do. We use jargon. Every field develops its own vocabulary, a shorthand that insiders share. When we use it with those outside our circle, we exclude rather than include. We bury the point. Anxious about being rejected, we layer our real message under so much qualification and preamble that it gets completely lost. We speak to ourselves, not our audience. We present information in the order that makes sense to us, rather than in the order that serves the listener. The bottom line, up front, BLUF. Method. Military communicators use a technique called BLUF. Lead with the conclusion. State what you need, what you recommend, or what you've decided. Then provide the context and rationale. This is the opposite of how most people communicate, but it is dramatically more effective. Instead of, "I've been looking at the quarterly numbers and comparing them to last year's performance and considering the market conditions," say, "We need to change our pricing strategy. Here's why." Lead with the destination. Then take people on the journey. The one-sentence test. If you cannot summarize your core message in a single clear sentence, you do not yet understand it well enough to communicate it. Before any important communication, an email, a meeting, a presentation, write your single core message sentence first. Everything else serves that sentence. Chapter exercise. Take an email you recently sent and rewrite it using the BLUF method. Lead with your main point in the first sentence. Reduce the total word count by 30%. Notice how much clearer and more professional it becomes. Chapter 6. Emotional intelligence and the empathetic communicator. You can be the most technically gifted communicator in the room, clear, concise, well prepared, and still fail completely if you cannot read the room, connect with emotions, and meet people where they actually are. This is the territory of emotional intelligence, or EQ. Daniel Goleman, who popularized the concept, argued that EQ is a better predictor of professional success than IQ. In the realm of communication, this is indisputably true. Real story. Oprah Winfrey. From silence to the world's greatest conversation. Oprah Winfrey grew up in extreme poverty in rural Mississippi, raised initially by her grandmother in conditions of deep deprivation. She was abused as a child, gave birth to a premature son who died shortly after. She moved between parents, acted out, and was labeled difficult. She had every reason to collapse inward, to let shame and trauma silence her permanently. Instead, she found her voice through books, then radio, then television. But it was not just her story that made Oprah extraordinary. It was her almost supernatural ability to make the person sitting across from her feel completely safe, safe enough to tell the truth, to cry, to be human. She built a media empire not on brilliance or spectacle, but on empathy, on the radical act of truly listening and truly caring. She did not just communicate. She connected. The 4 pillars of emotionally intelligent communication. Self-awareness. You must understand your own emotional state before you can manage how it affects your communication. An unaware communicator is a reactive one. Self-regulation. The ability to pause between stimulus and response, to choose your words rather than just react with them. Empathy. The capacity to genuinely understand and share the feeling of another person. Not sympathy, empathy. Not, I feel sorry for you, but I understand what you are experiencing. Social skill. The ability to manage relationships, navigate conflict, and inspire cooperation. The applied output of the first 3 pillars. Communicating across emotional states. One of the most important skills in advanced communication is recognizing which emotional state your listener is in and adjusting accordingly. A person in fear needs reassurance before they can receive information. A person in anger needs to feel heard before they can reason. A person in grief needs presence before they need advice. Trying to deliver a logical argument to someone in an emotional state is like trying to pour water into a glass that is already full. First, you must create space. Chapter exercise. Before your next important conversation, pause and identify the emotional state of the other person. What are they likely feeling right now? What do they most need from this conversation? How will you adjust your approach accordingly? Chapter 7. Storytelling. The most powerful communication tool in the world. Human beings do not think in data points. We think in stories. Our brains are narrative machines, wired over hundreds of thousands of years of evolution to process, remember, and be moved by story. A statistic enters the brain and is processed analytically. A story enters the brain and lights up the sensory cortex, the motor cortex, the frontal lobe, as if we are living the experience ourselves. Neuroscientist Yuri Hassan calls this neural coupling. The story literally synchronizes the brain of the listener with the brain of the storyteller. This is why the greatest communicators, teachers, preachers, politicians, and business leaders throughout history have all been great storytellers. Not because storytelling is a manipulation technique, but because it is how human beings most naturally understand and remember truth. The architecture of a compelling story. Every great story, from ancient myth to modern TED Talk, contains the same core elements. 5. A character we care about, relatable, specific, and human. Not a customer, but Sarah, a 34-year-old mother of 2 who. 6. A challenge or tension, the force that disrupts the character's world and creates the need for change. 7. A journey, the steps taken, obstacles faced, decisions made. 8. A transformation, what changed as a result, what was learned, what became possible. 9. A truth, the universal lesson that the listener can apply to their own life. This is the skeleton. What gives it life is specific, sensory detail. Not "it was cold," but the kind of cold that gets into your bones and stays there. Not "he was nervous," but his hands shook so badly he had to grip the podium. Business storytelling. In professional contexts, storytelling is not less important. It is differently applied. The most powerful stories in business answer 4 fundamental questions. Why does this matter? What problem does it solve? What happened when we tried this? What becomes possible now? A well-told case study, a compelling vision for the future, a transparent account of a failure and what was learned from it. These are the stories that build brands, cultures, and careers. Chapter exercise. Identify one experience from your professional or personal life that changed how you think. Structure it using the 5-element story architecture above. Write it out in 300 words, then practice telling it aloud in under 3 minutes. This is your signature story. Chapter 8. Difficult conversations. Navigating conflict with grace. If there is one communication skill that separates genuinely effective people from merely competent ones, it is this: the ability to have difficult conversations with grace, honesty, and care. Most people avoid difficult conversations. They delay the performance review. They let the resentment fester. They smile and say fine when they mean not fine at all. And in the avoidance, the problem grows, until what could have been a 10-minute conversation becomes a 10-month crisis. The anatomy of a difficult conversation. Authors Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen, in their groundbreaking work, identified that every difficult conversation actually contains 3 simultaneous conversations. The what happened conversation, a disagreement about facts, intentions, and who is to blame. The feelings conversation, the emotional undercurrent that neither party is explicitly addressing. The identity conversation, what this conflict says about who we are and our fears about what others think of us. Most failed conversations fail because people stay stuck in the what happened layer while the real conversation, the feelings and identity layers, goes unaddressed. The SBI framework for feedback. One of the most practical tools for difficult professional conversations is the SBI, Situation Behavior Impact Framework. Situation. Describe the specific situation, not a general pattern. In yesterday's team meeting, not you always. Behavior. Describe the observable behavior, not the character or intent. You interrupted 3 colleagues, not you're dismissive and arrogant. Impact. Describe the genuine impact in the first person. The impact on me was. The impact on the team was. This approach separates person from behavior, removes accusation, and opens a genuine dialogue rather than triggering defensiveness. The Platinum Rule. Most of us know the golden rule: treat others as you wish to be treated. In communication, there is a higher standard. The Platinum Rule: treat others as they wish to be treated. Understanding someone else's communication needs and preferences and adapting to them is the mark of a truly exceptional communicator. Chapter exercise. Identify one conversation you have been avoiding. Write out all 3 layers: what happened, feelings, identity, for both yourself and the other person. Then schedule the conversation within 48 hours. Do not wait for perfect conditions. Clarity and courage create the conditions.
Part 3. The Advanced Communicator. Influence, Leadership, and Legacy. Take advantage of every opportunity to practice your communication skills so that when important occasions arise, you will have the gift, the style, the sharpness, the clarity, and the emotions to affect other people. Jim Rohn. Chapter 9. The Art of Persuasion. Moving Hearts and Minds. Persuasion is among the most studied and most misunderstood skills in human communication. It is often confused with manipulation, the use of psychological pressure or deception to override someone's better judgment. True persuasion is the opposite. It is the art of helping another person arrive at a conclusion that genuinely serves them through honest, well-constructed communication. Aristotle identified 3 fundamental elements of persuasion, still as relevant as they were 2,400 years ago. Ethos, your credibility. Before your words can move anyone, they must trust who you are. Do you have expertise, integrity, genuine concern for their interests? Pathos,
Emotional resonance. People act on emotion and justify with logic. If you cannot connect with what your audience cares about, values, fears, and desires, your argument will never gain traction. Logos. Logical structure. Evidence, data, clear reasoning. The intellectual architecture that supports your case. The most persuasive communicators deploy all three in balance. A message built purely on emotion manipulates. A message built purely on logic bores. A message built on credibility alone can feel arrogant. It is the combination that creates genuine, lasting influence. The Yes Ladder psychologist Robert Cialdini's research on influence identified the principle of commitment and consistency. Once people have agreed to small things, they are far more likely to agree to larger things in the same direction. In conversation, this means starting with points of genuine agreement before introducing new ideas. Build a ladder of small yeses before asking for the big one. The power of asking, not telling. Counterintuitively, the most persuasive communicators often spend more time asking questions than making statements. Questions engage the listener's own thinking. When people arrive at a conclusion themselves, guided by skilled questions, they own it far more deeply than a conclusion handed to them by someone else. What would it mean for your team if this project succeeded? Is more persuasive than, this project will be great for your team. The first invites genuine thought. The second invites passive acceptance or defensive rejection. Chapter exercise. Before your next persuasive conversation, write down the 3 Aristotelian elements. 1. Why should they trust me? 2. What do they emotionally care about in this situation? 3. What logical evidence supports my position? Structure your conversation around all 3. Chapter 10. Public speaking. Commanding any room. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in history, was so afraid of public speaking in his early 20s that he enrolled in and then dropped a Dale Carnegie public speaking course before he had even attended a single class. He eventually returned, completed it, and later framed his certificate. He has said it is one of the most valuable things he has ever done. Real story. Warren Buffett, the billionaire who was terrified to speak. In his early career, Buffett avoided any situation that required him to present. He structured his entire schedule around this fear. After finally completing the Dale Carnegie course, he began teaching investment classes at the University of Omaha. Not because he needed the money, but because he knew that regular practice was the only way to truly conquer the fear. He understood that public speaking was not a nice-to-have skill for someone with his ambitions. It was essential. Today, his annual shareholder letters and Berkshire Hathaway meetings are among the most anticipated communication events in the business world. His voice, thoughtful, humorous, clear, and deeply honest, has become inseparable from his brand of extraordinary success. The 3 phases of a great presentation. Every great presentation has 3 phases: preparation, delivery, and follow-through. And most people invest almost all of their energy in the middle one. Preparation is the foundation. Know your material, yes, but more importantly, know your audience. What do they already know? What do they need to understand? What action do you want them to take? What is the single most important thing you want them to remember? Answer these questions before you write a single slide. Delivery is where most attention goes, and rightly so. The key principles. Slow down. Nerves make us rush. Deliberately pace yourself. Pause for emphasis. Let silence do its work. Vary your vocal energy. Monotone is the enemy of attention. Vary your pitch, pace, and volume. Use the physical space. Move with purpose. Use gesture to reinforce meaning. Make genuine eye contact. Not scanning the room nervously. Connecting,
one person at a time, for 3 to 5 seconds each. Follow-through is the most neglected phase. The best presentations end with a clear, specific, actionable call. What do you want your audience to do, think, or feel differently from this moment on? Make that call explicitly and with confidence. On notes and memorization. Do not memorize your speech word for word. This creates two problems: rigidity, it sounds rehearsed, not natural, and fragility. Lose your place and you lose everything. Instead, memorize your structure and your key transitions. Know your opening and closing word perfectly. Let everything in between be deeply understood, but flexibly expressed. Chapter exercise. Record yourself giving a 3-minute talk on any topic you know well. Watch it back without cringing, with genuine analytical curiosity. Identify 3 specific things to improve, then record it again. Repeat weekly. Nothing accelerates public speaking growth faster than honest self-review. Chapter 11. Digital communication. Email, social media, and the virtual world. We are living through the most dramatic transformation in the history of human communication. The written word, once a careful, considered medium, now carries the full weight of professional and personal relationships across billions of daily messages. Email, Slack, WhatsApp, LinkedIn, Twitter, Teams. The volume is staggering. The quality often is not. The email that builds your reputation. Every email you send is a communication artifact. It can be forwarded, screenshotted, quoted, and read by people you never intended. It represents your thinking, your professionalism, and your character. Treat it accordingly. The cardinal rules of professional email. Subject lines are headlines. Write them to be opened, not ignored. Be specific. Q3 budget proposal. Action required by Friday, not FYI. Lead with purpose. The first line should tell the reader exactly why you are writing and what you need. Apply BL Love. One email, one purpose. Multiple unrelated requests in a single email create confusion and delay. Send 2 emails if needed. Read before you send. Reread every email once before sending. Ask, is this clear? Is the tone right? Could this be misinterpreted? Would I be comfortable if this were forwarded to anyone? Never send email in anger. Wait 24 hours. Then decide if the email needs to be sent at all. It usually does not. The virtual communication revolution, remote work, has made video communication central to professional life. The screen is a new kind of stage, and it rewards a specific kind of communicator. Someone who is concise, visually engaging, energetically present, and technically fluent. Look at the camera, not the screen. This small discipline, which feels unnatural and must be practiced, creates genuine eye contact and transforms how connected you appear on video. Social media as a communication platform. For professionals and business leaders, social media is no longer optional. It is one of the primary arenas in which your communication voice shapes your professional reputation. The principles are exactly the same as every other communication context: clarity, authenticity, value to the audience, and consistency. The question to ask before every post, every comment, every public reply: does this add value, build trust, or deepen connection? If the answer is no, do not post it. Chapter exercise. Audit your last 10 professional emails. Score each on a scale of 1 to 10 for clarity, tone, and brevity. What patterns do you notice? Choose your lowest scoring email and rewrite it using the principles in this chapter. Chapter 12. Leadership communication. Inspiring teams and building culture. Leadership is, at its most fundamental level, a communication act. A leader who cannot communicate a vision clearly cannot mobilize a team to pursue it. A leader who cannot listen deeply cannot understand what their people need. A leader who cannot give honest, caring feedback cannot develop the talent around them. The greatest leaders in history have understood this instinctively. Real story: Winston Churchill, the stutter that nearly silenced a nation. Winston Churchill had a pronounced stutter and a lisp from childhood. He struggled through school and was considered by many of his teachers to be slow and difficult. As a young politician, his early speeches were widely mocked as labored and unimpressive. He spent years, literally years, working on his diction, studying the speeches of great orators, and writing and rewriting his own speeches with painstaking care. By the time the Second World War began and Britain faced its darkest hour, Churchill had forged his voice into one of the most powerful instruments of the 20th century. "We shall fight on the beaches. We shall never surrender." Those words, carefully crafted, deliberately delivered, rallied a nation that was on the brink of capitulation. Communication, in that moment, may well have changed the course of human history. The leader's communication responsibilities. Leaders must communicate with intention across 4 dimensions. Vision. Where are we going and why does it matter? Without a clear, compelling vision communicated consistently, organizations drift and people disengage. Values. What do we stand for? Culture is communicated, not just in policy documents and onboarding decks, but in every conversation, decision, and response to crisis. Feedback. Who are you becoming and how can I help you grow? Regular, honest, caring feedback is the most important developmental gift a leader can give. Recognition. What great things are happening and who deserves credit for them? Recognition is not mere politeness. It shapes behavior, reinforces values, and builds the kind of psychological safety where people do their best work. Communicating through crisis. How a leader communicates in a crisis defines their legacy more than almost anything else. The principles are simple and demanding. Be visible, be honest, be clear, be human, and be consistent. People can handle bad news. What they cannot handle is uncertainty and silence. In a crisis, communicate more than you think you need to. Acknowledge what you do not know. Outline what you are doing, and never, under any circumstances, try to spin your way through a genuine catastrophe. Chapter exercise. Ask 3 people who report to or work closely with you, what is one thing I could communicate more clearly or more often? Listen without defending. Write down what you hear, then change one thing. Part 4. Communication in business and career. Communication, the human connection, is the key to personal and career success. Paul J. Meyer. Chapter 13. The career-defining conversation. Every career contains a handful of conversations that, in hindsight, changed everything. The negotiation that led to a breakthrough role. The candid conversation with a mentor that redirected a trajectory. The moment in a meeting where someone finally said what everyone was thinking, and everything shifted. Most of these conversations do not happen by accident. They happen because someone had the courage to initiate them, the preparation to handle them with skill, and the emotional intelligence to navigate them with care. Asking for what you want. One of the most pervasive failures in career communication is the failure to ask. People wait to be noticed, wait to be promoted, wait for the right moment that never arrives, when a direct, well-framed request would have created the opportunity they needed. The principles of effective career asking. Be specific. I'd love to take on more responsibility is not a request. I'd like to be considered for the role of project lead on the Henderson account is a request. Frame around value, not need.
"I deserve this" is weaker than "Here is what I will bring to this role and what becomes possible for the team." Ask at the right moment, not when someone is stressed or distracted, when you have their genuine attention and they are in a receptive state. Accept the answer gracefully and follow up. If the answer is no today, ask what would need to be true for the answer to be yes in 6 months. Then go do those things. The performance review as communication opportunity. Most people dread performance reviews. Exceptional communicators view them as among the most valuable conversations of the year. They come prepared with a clear self-assessment, documented achievements, specific development goals, and honest feedback they want to give their manager in return. The performance review is not done to you. It is a conversation you actively shape. Chapter exercise. Identify one career-defining conversation you have been postponing. Write your preparation notes. What is the single most important thing you want to communicate? What outcome do you want? What objections might arise and how will you respond? Schedule it within 1 week. Chapter 14. Networking. Building relationships that open doors. The word networking makes many people uncomfortable. It conjures images of stilted small talk at corporate events, the aggressive exchange of business cards, the transactional energy of people who only reach out when they need something. That is not networking. That is networking done badly. Real networking is the practice of building genuine, mutually beneficial relationships with people whose work, values, and aspirations intersect with yours. It is not about collecting contacts. It is about creating connections. Maya Angelou's lesson in connection. Real story. Maya Angelou. From silence to celebration. Maya Angelou did not speak for 5 years as a child. Following a traumatic experience at age 7, she chose silence as her defense, believing that her voice had the power to cause harm. A teacher and family friend, Mrs. Bertha Flowers, gently coaxed her back to language by sharing literature, by reading poetry aloud, and by treating young Maya's voice as something precious and worth hearing. Angelou would eventually become one of the most celebrated voices in American literature, a poet, memoirist, and orator whose words have been read at presidential inaugurations and touched millions of lives around the world. She understood, deeply and personally, that connection begins with vulnerability and that the voice offered in trust to someone who receives it well is the seed of extraordinary relationship. The giver's mindset. The most magnetic networkers are not those who know the most people or attend the most events. They are the ones who consistently show up asking, "How can I add value to this person?" rather than, "What can I get from this person?" Give first. Share knowledge. Make introductions. Celebrate others' achievements publicly. Refer business. Recommend talent. Ask nothing in return. The relational equity you accumulate through genuine generosity is the most powerful career asset you will ever build. The follow-up. Where networks are built. The event is not where a network is built. The follow-up is. Within 24 hours of any meaningful professional encounter, send a personal, specific message. Reference something real from your conversation. Add value if you can. An article, an introduction, a resource. Do not send a generic "great to meet you." Send something that proves you were genuinely present and genuinely interested. Chapter exercise. Identify 5 people in your professional network you have not spoken to in over 6 months. Reach out to each one this week, not to ask for anything, but simply to reconnect, express genuine appreciation for your history, or share something of value. Notice the doors that open simply from showing up with warmth. Chapter 15. Negotiation. The language of getting what you want. Every professional life is a continuous negotiation. Salary, project scope, partnership terms,
team resources, deadlines, credit. All of it is negotiated, constantly, in explicit and implicit conversations. And yet most people receive no formal training in negotiation whatsoever. The result is predictable. People leave significant value on the table, accept terms that do not serve them, and sometimes damage relationships in the process. The fundamental shift from positions to interests. The most important insight in negotiation theory, articulated brilliantly by Roger Fisher and William Ury in Getting to Yes, is the distinction between positions and interests. A position is what someone says they want. An interest is why they want it. When negotiations stall, it is almost always because both parties are arguing positions. When negotiations succeed, it is because someone had the wisdom to ask, what is driving this position? What is the underlying interest? Your counterpart says they need the project delivered by Friday. That is a position. Their interest might be to present results at a board meeting on Monday. Understanding the interest opens entirely different possibilities for resolution. The power of silence in negotiation. The single most underused tool in negotiation is silence. After making an offer or a key statement, many people immediately fill the silence, apologizing, qualifying, retreating. This is almost always a mistake. Silence is power. Make your position. Then wait. Let the other party respond. What they say next will tell you more than an hour of questioning. Negotiating non-negotiables. Sometimes you encounter genuine non-negotiables, elements that truly cannot move. The skilled negotiator acknowledges these with respect, finds creative solutions around them, and always preserves the relationship even when an agreement cannot be reached. A no today is not a no forever if the conversation ends with both parties feeling respected. Chapter Exercise. In your next small negotiation, a deadline, a price, a favor, practice asking, what is driving that position for you, before responding to any request. Practice the silence. Notice how much more information you have when you stop filling every gap with words. Chapter 16. Your communication brand. How the world sees you. Every communication you have ever sent, every email, every presentation, every casual comment in a meeting, every social media post, every phone call has been contributing to something. Your communication brand. The way the world perceives your competence, your character, and your credibility. Most people's communication brand is accidental. It has been shaped by habits, defaults, and unconscious patterns rather than deliberate choice. The advanced communicator makes a different decision: to design their communication brand with the same intentionality they would bring to any other strategic endeavor. The 3 questions of communication branding. What do I want to be known for? Clarity of thinking, creative ideas, calm in crisis, genuine empathy, relentless follow-through? Identify 3 to 5 qualities you want to be synonymous with, and then communicate in ways that consistently demonstrate them. Where do I want to be visible? Not every platform, not every meeting, not every conversation demands your presence. Strategic visibility, being consistently excellent in the contexts that matter most to your goals, is more powerful than trying to be everywhere. What is my authentic voice? Borrowed voices are fragile. The most powerful communication brand is built on authenticity, on the clarity, values, and perspective that are uniquely yours. Develop it, protect it. Do not trade it for approval. Consistency, the foundation of trust. Trust is built through consistency over time. The communicator who is warm and engaged in person, but cold and dismissive in email, creates cognitive dissonance. The leader who articulates strong values publicly, but communicates them poorly internally, destroys credibility.
Your communication brand is not what you say in your best moments. It is the sum of every interaction in every context over time. This is why the work of this book is not a one-time exercise. It is a practice, a daily, lifelong commitment to showing up with clarity, care, and courage in every conversation. Chapter Exercise. Ask 5 people who know you professionally. If you were describing my communication style to someone who had never met me, what 3 words would you use? Compare their responses to the 3 qualities you want to be known for. The gap between these is your communication development agenda. Conclusion. Becoming the communicator. The world needs. You have come a long way from the first page of this book. You began as someone aware of a gap between where your communication is and where it could be. You have journeyed through the foundations of listening and presence, through the development of clarity, emotional intelligence, and storytelling, into the advanced territories of persuasion, public speaking, and leadership communication, and out into the practical landscape of careers, negotiation, and professional branding. But knowing is not doing, and reading is not yet practice. The communicators whose stories have been woven through these pages, Churchill and Gandhi, Oprah and Buffett, Jones and Angelou, did not transform their voices by reading about transformation. They transformed them by facing their fears in real rooms with real people. By failing, adjusting and trying again. By choosing to practice when it was inconvenient, uncomfortable, and unrewarded, until the practice became excellence, and the excellence became legacy. Your life is a story. Tell it with everything you have. The world needs communicators who can cut through the noise with clarity, who can connect across difference with empathy, who can lead through uncertainty with honesty, who can inspire action with vision and humility. That communicator is inside you. This book has shown you the door. Walking through it is your daily choice. Go. Open your mouth. Be heard. A final word. The doors are already open. Before you put this book down, consider this. Every significant breakthrough in your life will arrive through a conversation, a mentor who sees something in you, a partnership that changes your trajectory, a customer who becomes a champion, a leader who hears your idea and says yes. These conversations are not waiting for you to be perfect. They are not reserved for the naturally gifted, the formally educated, or the fearless. They are available, right now, to anyone willing to show up, speak honestly, and listen with their whole being. Communication is the door, and the door is already open. The only question is whether you are willing to walk through it. Recommended reading and resources: Foundations of Communication, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Dale Carnegie. The Art of Communicating. Thich Nhat Hanh. Talk Like Ted. Carmine Gallo. Emotional Intelligence. Emotional Intelligence. Daniel Goleman. Dare to Lead. Brené Brown. The Gifts of Imperfection. Brené Brown. Storytelling Story. Robert McKee. The Storyteller's Secret. Carmine Gallo. Made to Stick. Chip Heath and Dan Heath. Difficult Conversations and Negotiation. Difficult Conversations. Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton and Sheila Heen. Getting to Yes. Roger Fisher and William Ury. Never Split the Difference. Chris Voss. Leadership Communication. Leaders Eat Last. Simon Sinek. Start with Why. Simon Sinek Multipliers. Liz Wiseman. Public Speaking. TED Talks. The Official TED Guide to Public Speaking. Chris Anderson. Speak with No Fear. Mike Acker. The Art of Being Heard. Communication skills that transform careers and businesses.